So we are now to Revelation chapter 13, right? We have met the first beast of Revelation, which was a dragon, who was also called the old serpent, who is revealed to be the devil. That dragon and his other fallen angels, we remember that he had sent them to earth before Jesus was even born to try and stop Jesus from succeeding in his first coming. Obviously, they failed. Now we are at the time of the second coming. The rapture has happened, and there is a great war in heaven where Satan and his angels are now cast out from heaven for good. They're not allowed to return, right? They're never to be allowed in there again. So they've been cast down, and the earth is now the main scene of events that we're looking at here. So the last time all these angels were on earth was during the time Jesus walked the earth, all these fallen angels, right? And that comes from Revelation chapter 12, verse 4, where it talks about that dragon. It says, with his tail, he drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and stars are often used interchangeably with angels, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. We think back to how things were at the time of Jesus's birth. Was there a good king in Israel? No, there was King Herod, the Idumean king, who wanted no one, not even his own children, to succeed him. And he had no problem killing all of the children in the region just to be sure the prophesied Messiah wouldn't come and take his reign. Well, we see how that worked out for him, right? It didn't work out so great. So Satan has tried all these attempts to stop the Messiah. Back then, it was by strategy. He was thinking, what way can I do it? Now it's of necessity. There's nowhere else for him to go. He's been cast to the earth. He can no longer go back to heaven, and he knows his time's almost up, right? He's been evicted during this time of the tribulation. Remember how long the tribulation is. This Antichrist rules for 7 years. So when the first 3.5 years is up, and Satan sees he has no victory in heaven, there's only 3.5 years left for this guy. So he's very upset. He knows his time is super short, and all of his planning so far has come to nothing. So who is he furious with? Those that are still on the earth, that are connected to God. There are the chosen people of God, the Jews, who will be systematically attacked in an attempted extermination, but 1 out of 3 will survive, right? And they're called the remnant of Israel. And then there are, of course, a lot of people around the world who are believing and accepting Christ, mainly because of the witness of these sealed Jewish believers called the 144,000. So now we have tribulation saints, and we have the remnant of Israel that all still belong to God. And Satan, he wants to destroy them. So now that we have that first beast kind of understood, cast out of heaven, now in chapter 13, we're going to see 2 more beasts that join Satan. One of them is already on the earth as a political leader, right? He's, of course, the Antichrist. This is now Satan was that 7-headed, 10-horned, and 7-crowned dragon. And these other 2 that join with him, they are going to make this unholy threesome, right? This unholy, some people call them a trinity, but they're actually 3 separate beings. They're trying to mimic the true Trinity, which is that of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So when those seals, remember the first 7 seals, when those seals were opened in heaven, that first seal had to do with the release of this rider on a white horse that was coming to conquer. And that represented the Antichrist coming on the scene as a seeming savior, not a Messiah to Israel necessarily, but a savior to bring order to this crazy world. So in Revelation 6, verse 1 and 2, it had said, and when I saw the Lamb open one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. So somebody, the beginning of this tribulation was the release of this political leader who was to conquer the whole world, bring the whole world under his power. And he has been deceiving and controlling the world for 3.5 years. And most of the world willingly submitting to him. But by the time you get to the midpoint of the tribulation, he declares himself a God type figure. And the way that this happens, he defiles the temple in Jerusalem, right? When he does that, it's called the abomination of desolation. 3 of the world kings, the world is divided into 10 kingdoms or 10 groups of kingdoms, whatever you want to think of it. These 10 kingdoms, 3 of the leaders, they are like, wait a minute, we can't accept what you're claiming now. And they turn on him, but he's able to destroy them and take absolute dominance over the world. Now he receives a deadly wound, right? But we see that he comes back from that. So when he comes back from that, people begin to think, wow, this guy is supernatural. Maybe this guy is from beyond, whether that be from beyond that planet or whether that be from a deity type thing. People begin to put their faith in him. And he now is going to double his efforts. Now, this particular man, he's revealed for what he truly is after this recovery. This is when it comes from just being a man of sin, right, to being the beast of Revelation. And he doesn't come alone. He's not revealed in the second 3.5 years alone. There's another beast that joins him, right? And the other beast that joins him, his main purpose is to convince the world this isn't just some dictator. He truly is a man worth worshiping. He is a god, and he supports his statements and he excuses his evil. And that man is referred to as the false prophet. All right. So the false prophet is going to convince the people to worship the Antichrist. And we're going to see from this chapter that the source of both the false prophet and the Antichrist power is the dragon, is the devil, is Satan. Okay. So we've seen it from the heavenly side. Now let's see it from the earthly side. So that takes us to chapter 13, verse 1. It says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns." Slightly different than the dragon, right? Who had 7 crowns. "And upon his head the name of blasphemy." So whenever you come to the Bible and you find imagery like the land and the sea, you always got to look back. What did that mean historically? Well, the land or the earth, right, that usually represented Israel. And the sea, referring to the Mediterranean for the region, it meant the islands of the Gentiles, all the non-Jewish nations and all these things. So that's the multitude of people. And you don't have to guess at what that means. This isn't just, I think that's what it means. Whenever we get to Revelation 17, the same imagery is used, talking about the great harlot. And the explanation in verse 15 says, "And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest," the seas, right, "where the horse sitteth, are the peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." We know it means other nations. The same picture of waters or floods being the Gentile nations and Israel being the earth or the land is throughout the Bible. So in Isaiah chapter 17, verse 12, it says, "Woe to the multitude of many people, which make a noise like the noise of the seas, and to the rushing of nations that make a rushing like a rushing of mighty waters." In Isaiah chapter 60, verse 5, says, "Thou shalt see and flow together, and thine heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto thee." So the picture of the seas being the Gentiles is all throughout the Bible. And when talking about a nation rising up against the Philistines, do you guys remember where the Philistines, where they dwelt? It was within the land of Israel, right? Within the God-appointed land of Israel. That was over in what we today call, I believe, the Gaza Strip, okay? So it says whenever an army of Gentile nations was going to rise against them, it says in Jeremiah 47:2, "Thus saith the Lord, behold, the waters rise up out of the north. They shall be an overwhelming flood. They shall overflow the land and all that is therein, the city and them that dwell therein. Then the men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall howl." So this creature, this beast, arising out of the sea, tells us that the Antichrist will likely be a non-Jewish person. John is standing on the sand of the sea, and he sees this beast rise up out of the sea. Now, there's a lot of different views. People argue what nation he could come from. There's a whole bunch of different thoughts. But I think the one thing we can agree is he's most likely a Gentile. Now, what's that? Syria. Well, there are some people where there's a passage in the Bible talks about the Assyrian standing against the people. That's in one way, people say, well, maybe it's the Antichrist. And interestingly, the Assyrian nation, they have not had a country of their own, but people genetically still know they're Assyrian in some parts of the world. They're actually small groups of Assyrians. So it's interesting that that's the case, but I'm not convinced that that's definitely the case. The issue is there's a passage in the Bible that a lot of people think he's going to be a Roman, okay? And that comes from a passage in Daniel, which talks about the people of the prince that shall come shall crucify Jesus, essentially. And who was it that crucified Jesus? That passage is in Daniel 9:26. It says, after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who was it that destroyed the city and the sanctuary? It was the Roman Empire. And the end thereof shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Well, yes, he might be Roman, but a lot of people forget the Roman Empire didn't involve just one nation. It involved a whole bunch of nations and their subsequent sub-nations or offspring nations. So here's just a short list. It says that were part of the Roman Empire. It was Portugal, Spain, Andorra, England, France, Monaco, Luxembourg, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Italy, San Marino, Malta, Austria, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Cyprus, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. That's not including the offshoot nations like the United States, Canada, Mexico, most of South America, Australia, and so on. Big portions of India even, all over. So that narrows it down, right? Now you know which country he's coming from, or you still have no idea. And the point is, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, right? It doesn't matter where their origin is. But you see that trying to guess and say, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? Doesn't matter. And nor will you ever be able to select it. If God wanted us to know the name, guess what we would know? The name. You know, he wanted to know that Cyrus was going to conquer the Babylonians, so he gave us his name. He chose not to with the Antichrist. So this beast, similar to the dragon, right, has 7 heads and 10 horns, but has 10 crowns instead of the 7 crowns that the dragon had. That's because this beast, right, he has made all of his power comes from the 10 kingdoms that he rules over. So the 10 horns represent these 10 kingdoms, which again are either nations or groups of nations, and they willingly give their power to the Antichrist. But as we mentioned earlier, during that time of this kingdom, he begins to blaspheme God. He begins to blaspheme God, and even to the point where he calls himself God. And of course, some of them then turn against him. Now, not only does he blaspheme God, which we're going to read in a few verses, he also blasphemes those that are in heaven. What is that talking about? We get to verse 6 when we see that. Why would he blaspheme those that are in heaven? Aren't they just the people that he killed, that he's been killing for 3.5 years already? Wouldn't make sense to blaspheme someone you killed, calling whatever they said not true, right? Calling them to be liars. Well, he's blaspheming the only explanation, those that have been raptured, those that are they are not within his reach, those he could not kill and cannot kill, those who have already been taken. Again, evidence of the pre-tribulational rapture, right? So this blasphemy is connected in some way to the abomination of desolation, because again, he's claiming to be God, which means all these people that went to God for real, they must be liars. But of course, we know the truth. This man's the liar. And then, of course, there's the revolt of the 3 kings, which he puts down. So the Antichrist, he's described as his own beast here, right? He's the entire beast described in this chapter of Revelation 13. He's wearing a crown. But back in the book of Daniel, he's described as a horn on another beast. So in Daniel chapter 7, we have these four beasts representing the four world kingdoms, and the fourth beast is going to represent the final world kingdom. And the Antichrist is seen as the final part of that final world kingdom. So in Daniel chapter 7, verse 7, says, "After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces. It stamped the residue with the feet of it. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and had 10 horns. And as I considered the horns," there's 10 nations making up the power of this beast, right? "As I considered the horns, behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots." You see the picture of these 3 kings removed. "And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man." It's not a nation this time, it's a person. "And a mouth speaking great things." Remember blaspheming God? That's a pretty great thing to say. Not a good thing, but a pretty magnificent thing in the terms of how evil it is. So this little horn has the features of a man speaking great things, meaning he talks a big talk. Well, how much bigger do you talk than blaspheming the God of all creation and trying to take the throne in the holy place of God? So these 10 horns in Daniel, they line up to these 10 kings of Revelation, and also the 10 toes of Nebuchadnezzar's vision of the final kingdom, right? And in Daniel chapter 2, verse 41 to 44, it says, "And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. But as the toes of the feet were part of iron, part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." So we see the same imagery in the Bible over and over again, talking about this Antichrist ruling over this final world power, a worldwide kingdoms. And like I said, people want to predict who he is. The options are endless. Don't even try. But in the age of genetic testing, it is interesting that you can find out that you were Assyrian, or perhaps you were had a Jewish background, or whatever you may be, right? That's all very interesting, because Daniel tells us no matter what the origins of this man is, he does not trust in the gods of his father. So that means he could be a Christian, he could be a Buddhist, he could be anything, he could be a Hindu, he could also be Jewish, but he certainly doesn't trust in the gods that his father trusted in, or the God of the universe, right? So what else can we learn about this beast? We now go back to Revelation chapter 13, verse 2. It says, "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority." So the beast that we see, this Antichrist, has the body of a leopard, the feet of the bear, and the mouths in the head of his many heads are like the mouths of a lion. They're filled with razor sharp teeth that devour and break. So the feet of the bear, that indicates that he's going to have a lot of power when he stands. When you're just looking pound for pound power, you'll be hard pressed to find something more powerful than a bear, right? The body of a leopard indicates the speed in which he can conquer, how fast he travels. Again, we don't have to guess at any of this. Why? Because we saw this exact same imagery in the book of Daniel, and God already explained what it meant. We don't have to guess at any of this. So from the earthly perspective, this beast, this Antichrist, he's going to have his power and his position given to him from the kings. But from the spiritual perspective, it's not just from the kings, it's the devil himself that empowers this man. He gives him authority, he gives him power, and of course we know the dragon is Satan. So back in Daniel 7, we saw these 4 creatures together, right? They were kingdoms that would all last until the end times. Guess what? Babylon, currently present day Iraq, right? Persia, present day Iran. Greece, present day Greece, right? And of course, the Roman Empire, all of these nations are still around, including the city of Rome, right? Still there. So in Daniel chapter 7, verse 4 through 6 says, talking about these four beasts, the first was like a lion. It had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. That's Babylon. And behold, another beast, the second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast also had four heads, and dominion was given unto it. Then you skip down to verse 11 and 12. It says, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a short time. So why did I say all that? Well, one, all of the features of the previous world kingdoms are given to this king. The Antichrist will conquer quickly, will destroy many, and just like that bear had three ribs in his mouth, guess how many kings this Antichrist puts down? Same thing, three kings, right? He has the dominion that was offered to Nebuchadnezzar. He had the ability to conquer the entire planet had he chosen to do so. This Antichrist is given the same dominion, right? And then Daniel chapter 7, verse 24 says, the 10 horns out of this kingdom are the 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall rise after them. This is the Antichrist. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue three kings. We've talked about this over and over. So what we learn from this beast, he's a very effective warlord. He's very effective conqueror. He can crush any opposition. He can conquer the whole planet. And if the political side, he's a great political leader. But from the spiritual side, how does God view him? As a savage monster, a savage beast, a horrible creature. Remember Nebuchadnezzar's view. It was a beautiful statue. Silver, gold, bronze, right? Iron, good metals. From God's point of view, horrible, savage beasts that are terrifying and need destroyed, right? So how long does this Antichrist rule? We've said it before, and I'll say it again here. His kingdom lasts 7 years. But the first 3.5, he claims for a peaceful time. He says, I'm here to make peace. I'm here to make everything better for Israel. And his peace destroys many. In the last 3.5 years, it's a time of utter devastation and terror because from both the natural world, the beasts of the field, everything's turning on humanity. From the political world, the Antichrist and all that he follows are trying to exterminate anyone who claims any relationship to God. And from the judgment point of view, God is pouring out his wrath on the entire world. So his second 3.5 years, not a good time. I have a feeling the economy is going to crash. So don't invest in your 401k then. So the deal he makes a 7-year deal with Israel for his kingship, right? In Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, it says, and he, speaking of the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Again, a week being 7 days to us, but a week also being 7 years. Each day can represent a year. And in the midst of the week, the very middle of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. How is he going to get the temple to stop being used? For the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. He's going to cause abomination within the temple, the abomination of desolation. Even, how long will that last? Until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So that means it's going to last till the return of Jesus Christ, till all things are complete. So verse 3 says, this is Revelation 13 now, we're back there. It says, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to the death. The beast is going to be killed. But his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So he was amazingly resurrected. So he has one of his heads killed, which should have destroyed him, should have killed him. But he makes his full recovery, and that leads the world to believe in this pseudo-resurrected leader. Now, whether he truly dies and truly is brought back to life, or whether it just seems to die and he seems to come back to life, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The world is convinced that he should be dead, but he is not, right? They begin to worship him and the one who had given the Antichrist his power, which of course is Satan. Now we see this prophesied in the Old Testament as well. Zechariah 11, verse 17 says, woe to the idol shepherd, I-D-O-L, the idol shepherd that leaveth the flock. How interesting. He is going to make an idol and lead the flock. Isn't that what the abomination of desolation is, right? He's going to be an idle shepherd that lead the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. Sounds like he has something that tries to kill him on his right side. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. But somehow, again, he recovers. Now, this may seem a little far-fetched in our skeptical world. It might seem a little crazy that people would worship a man, especially in the day of Photoshop and videos that are doctored and all this stuff. Is people really going to believe it? But you know, for decades now, the global vision for all countries, anytime they meet, especially after a major war or a major issue, is what? To bring the world and make it united, to force peace, to stamp out anything they disagree with. So you could do so with economic reasons. We got to lift everyone out of poverty. You could do it with military might. You can't stand against us, and it would be foolish to do so, right? Or all kinds of things could be considered. Climate change, alien invasion, a meteor is coming. We need to build some kind of defense. Nuclear war, this is the only way to prevent it. AI is going to take over. There's a rapture and all these people have gone missing. We need to band together to stand against it. Is it that hard to believe that when people are fearful, they might do things that right now we think is crazy? If you were to tell people in 2019 the things we'd be doing in 2020 for COVID, do you know what 90% of people would say? Oh, no way I'd ever do that. Oh, they have to force me to do that and pry that from my cold, dead hands. Except at the end of the day, pretty much we all complied. They said stay home, so we stayed home. They shut the stores down. We didn't break the doors down. The point is, it's not that far-fetched. They can control things fairly quickly, especially if there's a crisis, such as the rapture, people missing everywhere, right? Humans are very fast to idolize anything, to worship anything, especially if there's groupthink involved. When a group of people are pushing it, people follow it. And how about when someone supernaturally defies death? It'll be a whole lot easier, right? Unless you already know the truth, unless you already know what's happening, unless even in this tribulation, you've picked up your Bible and you know what's coming next, right? What is the biggest push of the literary world right now? What is the one thing they want to get rid of out of every library, every courthouse, every statement, every television show? What is the one thing they want out? What is it? Anyone? Jesus, the Bible, God, get it out. Talk about whatever you want. Just don't mention those things, right? You know, right now in a few public school libraries today, there's a big push to get rid of the Bible from their library. They're not putting it in classrooms using this curriculum, but from the library. Why? Because it has inappropriate content for young children. I agree. There is some inappropriate content for young children. That doesn't mean you shouldn't read it. You should see what the result of it is. You're not forcing this upon kids, but they can't even read it. But there's tons of other books with tons of other inappropriate content, but none of that's a problem. You know, they removed the Bible from the bestseller list. It's still the bestseller, but do you know why they removed it? Because, oh, well, it's not fair. No other book could ever get there. May not be fair, but it's still the facts, right? Bible is still the bestseller. Do you know right now, if you go to a university, a public university, and take a Bible course, just to read about the history of the Bible, most of it is used to disgrace or discredit the Bible. That's the main reason they study it, right? And they start to water it down. Oh, this is just poetry. This is just, you know, ancient man's take on this view. the real question I have to always ask is, why are you so interested? Why do you care about the Bible if it's not true? I have never once tried to discredit the Iliad or the Odyssey. You know why? Because it's just a book about gods that are not real, right? Zeus and Aphrodite or whatever their names are, I don't care about because they're not real. Why is it if everyone is convinced the Bible's not true, they're so eager to get rid of it? Because they know, whether they want to admit it or not, the Bible contains the truth. They know where the truth is. How do I know that? Because look at every crisis. It's either anger with God or pleading with God. That's how it ends up, from the atheist and otherwise. It's anger with God or begging God. That's where it is, because they know the truth, right? The world is, we are trying to set it up every day, not we, but the world, trying to set up the world every day so that your children do not know who to run to. They do not know who God is. They don't know about Adam and Eve. They don't know about David. They don't know about Noah. They don't know about the coming judgment. They don't believe in Satan. They're trying to erase it from existence because they're preparing the world for someone else entirely. And with that being said, and all that good news, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll pick up where we left off in verse 4 of Revelation 13.